Today's conversation is a fun one because it's all about using credit card points to get discounts on travel. I did something a little bit different and brought in my friend Colin Stroud, who has a credit card travel business. Colin's going to share some really tactical advice on how you can get started with credit card points. And we even talk about some specific use cases where you can get the most out of it. Along the way, I share my story of how I took my family of three on a vacation to the Bahamas completely for free using just one credit card. And it's a strategy that anybody can replicate. If you've been thinking about getting into more of the travel game or using credit cards to your advantage as part of your financial strategy, this episode is 100% for you. Colin, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, so good to be here, Jackson. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
Me too. I've been following your story and your business on LinkedIn for a couple of years now. And I think it's really interesting what you do and the benefit that you provide for people. And I know it's been an interesting personal story as well. I was wondering if we could start with you sharing a little bit of where you were at before you got into the points and miles world and how that kind of journey began for you of really getting into the points and miles strategy space.
Yeah, I never planned on this, and obviously it's not a major in college or something. It used to be a credit card points strategist or something. So it's very niche, very kind of a funny thing. And I joke that I still like no one over the ages of 65 can understand what I do. Um, but basically, I was into travel most of my life. Specifically got into it as a teenager, had an experience, got to go to Poland, and my world kind of opened. I thought, this is amazing. I can't, like, this place is so cool. Europe is so cool. Just had this experience of how amazing travel can be when I was 16. And then just was kind of couldn't stop and wanted to go everywhere and anywhere I could go. And basically went to college, got married. We got pregnant very quickly, had my first daughter. And then I was in brand new out of college with a job I didn't love and was kind of bored and not wanting to stay in that job. And had gotten into points a little bit because I basically realized, yeah, all this travel I was doing as a single person, this kind of, budget travel style is not going to work anymore with a wife and a little girl. You can't stay at the crappiest hotel or whatever. So I was like, well, I can't, no way I can afford to do the kind of travel that I would like to do. So you can imagine you go down the points rabbit hole. Like a lot, that's how a lot of people I know get into points. And there's, literally hundreds of thousands of people out there who love points and get into points and consider themselves, really good at points. And so I was just trying to join their ranks. And that was it. But it was at a time where I was very professionally unfulfilled. And I thought, wait a minute, like as I'm, helping a few friends and a few family members and doing some stuff for myself, I'm like, this could probably be a business or something, you know what I mean? And I've always been a little bit entrepreneurial. And so I thought, well, I'm helping these people save a bunch of money. Like I helped my parents, I helped all these other people. So maybe I could start charging some money to help people figure this stuff out because it's so confusing. And yeah, the first time someone paid me, I think it was $40. I need to go back and look, but yeah, I think it was $40. Someone paid me for a call. I did an hour call and I taught them some stuff, and that's basically the business started from there. And about 18 months after that, I think it was, I went full time into the business. So pretty quickly, it took me about 18-ish months of side hustling, if you will, to go full time into what is now basically a points and miles consulting business called Go Somewhere. So I could talk maybe more about the business in a second, but that's kind of how I got into it. And it all happened very quickly and very slowly at the same time. And I certainly wasn't the preeminent expert in the world, not that I am today, but I wasn't when I started. It was very much a learning process of I know a little bit, I can help people go from 0 to 1 because I'm at 1. And then I kept progressing and was able to take on more and more advanced, complicated situations. So it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, it's really cool, and you've shared so many of your win stories on LinkedIn that I've enjoyed reading. One thing I noticed, and we'll get into the points and miles strategy here in a second, but since I love business, I can't help but mention in this. One thing I noticed that you did was really smart is when you first started off, it looked like you were mostly working with, maybe individual families trying to book a honeymoon, that kind of thing. And your strategy slowly shifted over time to focus more on business owners, which LinkedIn is like the perfect marketplace for that because half the people on LinkedIn are business owners. And it seems like it's a no brainer slam dunk for someone. If you run a business and you have $10,000 a month of expenses, why not put that on a credit card? You could very easily get maybe a quarter million points per year and take your family on vacation for free wherever you want to go in the world. I think it's a brilliant business model where it's easy to prove the ROI and it's also time and labor intensive to perform the service just on like a one off. Anyone that's planned a trip before that has spent 6 or 7 hours looking at different flights and trying to coordinate knows that it's a huge headache. It's nice to
Yeah.
be able to outsource that to someone who's an expert.
Yeah, without question, without question.
That's really cool. So for anyone that's, maybe seen the points and miles game before and is wondering whether it's actually worth it, what would you say is one of the best points deals that you've ever found?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some pretty wild ones, I would say, for my clients. And when I say clients, just to be clear for listeners, one of the services I have is basically a deal hunting service. So someone would say, "I've got all these points. I really want to go to Europe. Find me a business class seat." So in that sense, I've done hundreds of those. So I'm just looking all over the world, every program, every credit card thing you can imagine. So I've had lots of exposure. So yeah, there's been so many remarkable ones. I would say it's probably the business class flights to Europe that consistently you see just a crazy value where you might see like it ends up for a couple, it ends up being $10,000 worth of flights, but you only paid, we'll say 250,000 points out of pocket, which is the equivalent of about $2,500. So that's an awesome deal. Even more flashy than that, I did help two different couples who are both business owner, high earner, high spender couples that had a lot of points, seven figures of points to use, basically do the same trip. So two different couples, they don't even know each other, but they did the same trip. So it was New York City to Dubai on Emirates first class. And they both did like a 2 or 3 day stopover in Dubai and stayed at some fancy hotels. And if you know anything about Dubai, you know it's one of the most luxurious destinations on the planet, if not the most. It's just the money there is insane. So they did a stopover. They went on to the Maldives, which is a small, set of islands off the coast of India. Super, super famous for the overwater bungalows, perfectly blue water. So they were able to use points to fly business class, round trip, New York City, Dubai, the Maldives, and back, and stay in some overwater bungalows. Both of them stayed at two different Hilton resorts. One was at the Conrad there, I think. The other one I can't actually even remember. But the total cash price of these trips was like staggering. It ended up being like close to $30,000, just worth of flights and hotels. And it was so fun to help with those because I mean, yeah, at that point it's just a game. It's like the numbers are so large, it's hard to even really fathom. But they were able to do it and they got great deals and they were pretty thrilled, as you can imagine. So both made it there and back safely, married, honeymoon, happy. So it was so fun to help with both of those this past year.
Oh, that's super fun. That's amazing. And, it's the kind of thing when you think about it, I think about different phases of our life. And at some phases in your life, you have money. At some phases, you have time. And at some phases of life, you have energy. And it seems like those three almost never line up with each other. And
That's
so,
funny.
especially like, maybe earlier in life where you have the time and the energy, but maybe you don't have a ton of financial resources, it seems like points and miles could be definitely something worth looking into where you can create some of those timeless experiences for you that cement relationships and create memories that you will always have with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, without question. I mean, it's yeah, you're right. Those do never align, but yeah, having like understanding the point stuff can be really helpful. Arguably, any of those, whatever place you're in, but especially that one. Yeah, and I thought I would just mention too, like some things, what I just shared there is incredibly unrelatable to most people. But to share even like a cool deal that just I did myself that's quite relatable is 4 nights at the Hyatt Regency in Bonita Springs, Florida. Beautiful place. It's got a water park for kids. It's got a little boat that takes you to a private beach. Super nice place. I went there during spring break. The cash rate for our room was about $1,200 a night. It's not normal there, but because it's spring break, they jack up the prices like crazy. We paid just 21,000 points per night. So that's like 210 bucks worth of points for a $1,200 a night hotel. So for 4 nights, it's about 80,000 points. It's real, as you know, it's not very hard to get 80,000 points, spending or a welcome offer or something like that. So just to show it's like, okay, that's a $4 or $5,000 stay that we got for pretty much a welcome offer worth of points. We did that just this past March, my family, and it's like, okay. Most people can that I can understand that. I can imagine getting to Florida, staying in a place like that. Now Maldives is a little bit unrelatable, especially if you have kids. But yeah, just to show you, like that stuff is totally possible, and there's whatever state of life you're in, like there's really cool stuff that you can do.
That's so cool. And it's interesting because there's like different levels to the points game, right? There's like the welcome offer, there's using the Chase travel portal, there's transferring to, partners, whether those are hotels or airlines. And even if you just take like the level one, you can still find some pretty amazing deals. My wife and I had this experience last year where I kind of challenged myself. I was like, I want to see if I can take my family on vacation completely for free, like not pay a penny out of my pocket. And so I found this credit card. It was one of the Chase Inc. cards, which is like their business line of credit cards. And it had this crazy welcome offer. It was like $800 worth of points for their welcome offer. I happen to have a pretty big expense coming up that I could like hit the spending requirement just off of that one expense in my life. So I signed up for this card. I had like I think it was a $3,000 spend or something. I have this big transaction, cover the limit that I needed to spend to get the points. And then what's funny is I didn't even purchase anything in points. I just redeemed it all for cash and ended up paying for the flight down to, so I was living in North Carolina, paid for the flight down to Florida, had a 4-day cruise to the Bahamas and the flight home, and it was all totally free. I think I ended up making $21, which was just like crazy. It's like, okay, a family of 3 for almost a week-long vacation to the Bahamas, and I used one welcome offer to cover the cost. It was amazing.
Yeah, that is pretty impressive. Yeah, I actually recall, I think I remember seeing either a poster and you did an email newsletter about that. I get your newsletter and I was like, wow, this is like, that's the win. And I'm guessing you weren't staying at the presidential suite of that cruise ship, but still, like
No.
that's amazing that you did that. I love that as like a challenge. And yeah, it's totally doable. It requires some flexibility and creativity, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's totally can be done. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, we were in an interior cabin, so it wasn't like, we had the fancy balcony or anything, but interior cabin was perfect when you're trying to get a toddler to sleep on a ship.
Yeah, I bet. That's great. That's awesome.
So, I wanna dive into the tactical side of things here. There's literally hundreds of different credit cards on the market. There's so many different points and loyalty programs. Where do you see the highest ROI for people that are looking to get the most out of their points?
Yeah, there's so many cards. Typically, you're gonna have travel cards, cashback cards, store cards. I think for the purpose of this conversation, um, to get the highest ROI, I would throw out store cards, throw out your JC Penney card, your TJ Maxx card, throw out even cashback cards. And the reason why I would throw out cashback cards and focus this conversation on travel cards is the arbitrage opportunity possible with travel points. So I just described to you a situation where my family stayed at a $1,200 a night hotel for only 21,000 points. So 210 bucks worth of points for a $1,200 a night hotel. That arbitrage, that gap, whatever you want to call it, you'll never get that with cash back. You're never going to get that with a JCPenney card. It's impossible. The only way you're ever going to see that is in the travel points world. So right there, I'd say, okay, the travel cards are worth it over those other cards. At least that's my very strong opinion. So then the question is, what travel card? You have 3 categories from there: hotel cards, airline cards, and then you have these bank branded cards. So everyone knows what hotel and airline credit cards are. It's pretty self explanatory. But these bank cards are a little bit more hazy. So you have like the Chase Sapphire Preferred is really famous. Capital One Venture Card. Taylor Swift was in a commercial for them. People will see these commercials online. They're like, yeah, I don't know if that's any good. What is that? Like, are those airline miles? Because it says Capital One miles. What does that mean? Well, these cards, Chase, Capital One, American Express, Citi, Wells Fargo, they all have them. They're you're earning that bank's currency. Okay, so instead of earning Delta miles, you're earning Amex points. But what's really cool about that is that these different currencies can be transferred to different airline and hotel partners. So Chase, for example, transfers to Hyatt, which is how I booked that hotel. I had Chase points to transfer them to Hyatt. So that is going to be the highest ROI, very, very likely for most people, is to earn flexible bank points, wait, learn the game a little bit to the point where you can identify a really, really good deal with one of these airline or hotel programs. Now, there's nothing magic about these airline or hotel programs or transferring points, any of that. Basically, it's just sometimes these airline or hotel programs have really, really good deals that we even can't even explain why they're there, or like, it's not a mistake. It's just how the program is set up. Like sometimes it's favorable, sometimes it's horrible too. Like, don't get me wrong, sometimes it's absolutely terrible value. So there's nothing magic about the whole transferring points. But yeah, the average Joe can earn, a stack of Chase points, transfer them to a valuable partner when there's a really good deal, and get a huge ROI. And just to give you a reference of ROI, like I'm pretty bad at doing the math in my head, but let's say you spend $100,000 in a year, you get 1.5x or 1.5% on all your spending. That's 150,000 points. Typically, those are worth about $1,500. I have redeem points at a level where those would be I would get maybe $5,000 of travel from that. So again, I said you spend $100,000 in a year. If I get $5,000 of travel, that would be a 5% return on my spending. There is no cashback card that exists that you're going to get flat 5% back on everything. So I hope I just didn't give you or any listener a headache there. But that's like we talk about ROI, you talk about the numbers investing. Like you can do better with the travel stuff. Now that doesn't mean you will for sure. And some people get trapped in by the marketing of the travel stuff and they end up doing terribly and they probably would have been better off with cash back. But the big asterisk here is if you know what you're doing, if you have some patience and want to learn how this stuff works, you can absolutely blow cash back out of have countless times. But there is that big asterisk there. So hopefully that answers your question and gives listeners some idea of where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that, when you're looking at transferring miles, that sometimes there are opportunities that are great deals and other times there are things that are a terrible deal. And I think it kind of creates this treasure hunt effect
Yeah.
where it's like really fun when you find something. And that's kind of the genius behind the system too, is that it's not gonna be a great deal every time, but when you find that great deal, you feel over the moon about it, and it gets you excited to use some of the benefits. And I think I saw recently, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have like a points versus cash price calculator where you can go and plug in how much a flight costs in points versus how much it costs in cash and quickly get a sense of whether this is a good deal or not.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, maybe we could put that in the show notes or something. It's super simple. It's just a calculator I built online using a cool AI tool, actually. And yeah, you just put in the cash price of the flight, the points price of the flight, and it will tell you and what kind of points you're using. Because, Hilton points and Delta points and whatever, American Express, they're all kind of created differently and have different values. Just put in those three numbers and it will tell you, is this a bad deal, a good deal, great deal, or sometimes it'll say like legendary deal. If you get legendary, you want to book that quickly. So yeah, I'll send that to you. We can get that up because I think it's a pretty helpful calculator to kind of understand if you're actually getting a good deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Who wants to do mental math on that?
No, not me. I don't do any of the math myself. I use my calculator every day. So
That's awesome. You know, it's interesting because if you've never used points and miles before, it can feel like this really obscure thing that's difficult to understand. But it's actually as simple as clicking a couple buttons. Like once you earn the points transferring, you just log in. Like let's say you have a Chase card, for example. I have a couple Chase credit cards. And you log into your Chase account and there's a spot right there on the website where it's like, how to redeem your rewards. And one of the options is just transferring to a partner. And so it's as simple as, okay, let's say you find, maybe a hotel you want to book with Hyatt. on the Hyatt website, you see, how much it's going to cost in points. And then you just go log into your Chase account and you transfer that amount of points to your Hyatt login and you're good to go. You just redeem it from there.
Yeah, as simple as that. I think people think it's harder than it is, and it's always fun to see people do it for the first time. They're like, "Oh, that's not bad. You made it like it sounded scarier than it was," you know? So, yeah, it's very,
Yeah.
very simple. Very, very simple.
One thing I learned the hard way though is not all credit cards are created equal. So for example, I think I had a um, Chase Freedom Unlimited card with a bunch of points on it that I'd earned for several years. And I was like, oh, this is great. I can just transfer these. Yeah, found out I needed a card that earns Chase Ultimate Rewards points, which would be the Chase Sapphire Preferred or the Chase Sapphire Reserve card in order to access that where I can transfer it to partners. So if someone's, maybe just getting started in the points and miles game, is there a certain credit card program you would recommend that they try first that's gonna be, like, just a good overall use of their time?
Chase is my favorite currency of points, for a number of different reasons. I just find them I like the user experience. I think it's easy to use. I think their cards are pretty good, and they have really valuable practical transfer partners. So a lot of people like Capital One because you earn 2 points on every single purchase. One thing with if you wanna transfer your points and try and get deals like that, Capital One doesn't have any domestic transfer partners. So all the airlines are foreign airlines. It's like, I can transfer to Singapore Airlines. Great. You know, it's most people aren't going to Singapore. And there's other uses for Singapore miles for sure, but it's a little bit more overwhelming. Whereas Chase transfers to Southwest, to United, to JetBlue. So it's like, oh, okay, those are very now you're not going to get crazy, crazy deals maybe on those, but it's like, okay, well, I use those airlines. They're like fly out of my city. It's a lot more approachable. And they have some good hotel brands as well. So yeah, I would probably say that Chase is the place to start. And so, the Chase Sapphire Preferred card is kind of a great starter card for almost anyone. It was one of my first. But one kind of a hack, with the Chase Freedom that you have there is you can actually put all your spending on that card because it actually earns points better than the Sapphire Preferred. And then you can just move the points from the Freedom over to the Sapphire if you want to have both cards. So you're almost leveraging the earning ability of a cashback card to earn extra points. So if that goes over your head, it may not be worth it. But starting with the Chase Sapphire Preferred, you really couldn't go wrong there. But there's really good arguments for city cards these days. And then the breaking news of the week is Built has a new card that allows you to earn points on your mortgage and your rent, and like it's really good card. Now, the one I really like is kind of expensive, so it's probably not the best starter card. But there's just a lot of cards out there. There's a lot of competition for like who's the best in the space, so it gets overwhelming. But I don't think you could go wrong starting off with Chase in my mind. They're kind of I feel like they're the kings of the points world for now. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of nuances once you get into it. Like, I spend time on the website, The Points Guy, looking at stuff sometimes, and Chase has a certain rule, like, if you're applying for multiple credit cards, you usually want to apply for Chase cards first because they'll automatically reject your application for a credit card if you've opened too many credit cards with other providers before you go and apply for a Chase card. So there's like so many different little rules and nuances you have to keep track of. I almost think of it as like the equivalence in my world in personal finance is like all of the tax laws. Like if you know the laws, you can really take advantage of it. But there's like so many exceptions and stuff you have to be aware of to make sure you're driving down the right path.
Yeah, it's so confusing. And that's why, like, I would say playing the credit card game, if you will, is one thing, and then maybe credit card churning is a whole nother thing. Churning, there's no strict definition of that, but basically opening lots of cards. So I might say more than three cards a year for more than 2 or 3 years, like you're churning. You know what I mean? You're constantly opening new cards. That's where you can run into all kinds of issues. It gets confusing. And now I will say it definitely works. I got a friend with over 40 credit cards and he's got over 800 in credit score. I can't really even fathom having 40 credit cards and managing that. But actually, I shouldn't say one friend. I have like at least five friends that have 40 plus credit cards. So I just like, I get them and I appreciate them. And they're very analytical engineer types. That's not actually really not my personality as much. But man, it's a lot to manage. But so that's a whole different world that I wouldn't necessarily recommend most people getting into. But 1 to 3 cards and having a strategy, and then maybe every once in a while, you and your sport and or your spouse opens a new card for a bonus. But to be consistently getting 3 to 6 cards a year, like some do, is you have to be a pro, and now you have a part time job, and now you have like this is your hobby. Some people are into model airplanes, like points is your hobby. Okay, it can be your hobby, but it's a lot though.
Yeah, it's interesting where it's like with most things in life, there's probably a middle ground where you can get 80% of the value for a lot less of the effort. And that might be something as simple as having a Chase Sapphire preferred card and a pretty simple strategy where you transfer points to all of the airlines that you use most frequently. You're still getting 80% of the value, but it's not taking a bunch of your time to do so.
Agreed, agreed. Yeah, it can become way too much. So one of my goals with my clients, especially my business owner clients, is always optimizing for simplicity. So I'm never out here recommending 7 cards for them. It's like let's use 1 or 2 cards for business, one maybe two for personal, and let's not touch that for like 5 years. Let's just sit it and forget it. Like that's the goal, and it's not just constant changes because it just becomes too much to manage. And there's more important things in life and business than this stuff for sure.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a big advocate for simplicity as well. Like in, my financial coaching practice, it's the same thing. I always try and create the most simple and most effective systems possible. I think that's really where you want to be. And even from like a personal finance perspective on this, if you're opening cards all of the time, that's going to be a hard inquiry on your credit report. And you could get yourself into trouble where maybe you're not thinking about it. You're opening several cards. Now you have several inquiries on your credit report. Your credit score has gone down because of that. Opening all these new lines of credit, and it's impacting the age of your credit as well. You have all these new lines of credit that have only been around for 6 months. Now you go to buy a house and your interest rate is higher on your mortgage because you opened a couple credit cards earlier this year, you know, and that could be easily tens of thousands of dollars over the lifetime of your mortgage that you could have saved yourself by protecting your credit score during that critical time period.
Yeah, that's it's no joke. Yeah, that can really it can really mess with you.
So I want to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here for a second. We've talked about a lot of the benefits of credit card points and miles. And so let's look at the flip side here. And I actually looked up some statistics online before hopping on this call. And I want to share some interesting facts with you. I'm sure you probably have already read these, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. So, what happened with airlines, if we look at, all of the major airlines, Delta, American Airlines, if we wind back the clock to 2019, most people stopped traveling during the COVID pandemic. And these airlines get into some serious trouble where they don't have enough people flying to cover the cost of, flying airplanes across the country. And so they need some support and they have to take on new debt to keep their businesses afloat. And they go to lenders looking to borrow money so they can survive, this period of the pandemic. These lenders say, well, hey, we need to understand your financials before we're going to lend you money. And where this comes into the credit card world is that they share their financials with these lenders. And it comes out for the first time that a lot of these airlines we fly on every single day are making more money from their credit card loyalty programs than they are from selling plane tickets. And one that was really shocking to me that I read is that American Airlines, their credit card loyalty program, the AA Advantage program, was valued between 19 and 31 billion dollars, and their market cap for their company, American Airlines, was valued at 6 billion. And so suddenly you have this company that the flights are actually a loss leader for them to get you into their loyalty program where they're making 4 times as much as what they're making on flights. And so it just sparked that question in me of, is this something that you see any sort of moral issue with, that a lot of these companies are making money by encouraging people to join these loyalty programs and then servicing that credit card debt over time?
Yeah, that's something I definitely struggle with. But I'll say, yeah, those numbers you shared are unbelievable and fascinating. Anyone who likes business, there's an article, I believe I got it right here. It's called The Big Business of Points and Miles. It's written by Point.me, which is a points and miles search service thing. It goes into the deep, deep details of all that stuff, and I highly recommend people read it. But yeah, like one of the ethical things, and this is beyond the airline, but yeah, just the credit card thing in general, and usury in general, if I'm even saying that right, which is usury, the practice of charging interest has been a debate since, before the time of Jesus. And it's just like, should we do this? Should we not? Is this okay? It's been like a controversial issue through all of humanity. And it's maybe peaked in like right now because it's like we're charging 27% interest on these credit cards. And if you look up like a pie chart of how Capital One made their revenue last year, they made a lot of money from interchange fees. They made a lot of money from a bunch of stuff. The biggest It's not a surprise what the biggest part of the pie graph is. It's interest, you know what I mean? And so the question is like, is that what funds the rewards? Well, it's not like entirely funded, but yes, that does help. So like even President Trump just suggested a 10% cap on credit card interest just rates just like a week or two ago, which I'm not sure what's actually going to happen there. But yeah, a lot of people predict that if that happens, rewards would go down, which indicates that the interest is funding that. So yeah, that's kind of it's definitely an ethical gray area because it's like it exists, and I don't really have strong opinions on that. You know what I mean? Of like, at the end of the day, the companies are making tons of money from all kinds of things, and I'm not choosing to hurt anyone, as I use my points. But there's an unfortunate reality that someone might have been hurt in the process of those points coming. So, yeah, I don't know the answer there because it's something I've definitely struggled with. I don't have any like mentors or leaders or people older than me that I respect that have opted out of points and miles or credit cards because of that. So I might, follow their lead. But I'd be interested to see if that's something that happens more. I I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know. So maybe it's a longer answer, and I don't have strong thoughts. But it's a great question. It's a great question. It's definitely worth thinking about for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing like if you invest in the S&P 500 and there's a company that sells alcohol and tobacco that's contributing to alcoholism and drunk driving, right? It's like, are you at fault because you're choosing to invest in that company? And I think just with the type of global economy that we have today, it's really difficult to discern all those situations. And it comes down to a personal choice of what you feel is right and what you feel is crossing the line. I'll share a little bit of my thoughts on this because I think it's a really interesting point. So I do one-on-one consultations with people about their finances, and I remember very distinctly this one experience I had with someone that came to me, and he was very successful, very well educated, had a good job, probably making about $150,000 a year. Like by all intents and purposes, an intelligent individual that makes smart decisions. And he told me, he said, I took my family to Disneyland for a vacation, and it was the first time I had ever carried a balance on my credit card. That was 9 years ago, and I've never paid off the balance on my credit card since. And it was just like this moment of, you see families, no one intends to get into credit card debt, but you're trying to provide a good experience for your family. Maybe things are a little bit tight financially. And so you see a welcome offer or a reward program, you're like, I'll take advantage of that. And before you know it, you're in this spiral that's difficult to dig yourself out of. And so I think the answer to that is you have to know yourself well enough to have that awareness of, am I someone that can handle this, or would this be a temptation for me? And then you also have to set yourself up for financial success where you make sure that you're staying out of debt, that you're keeping enough in, emergency fund and cash savings where you're never going to be justifying spending money you don't have because you're trying to capture some sort of credit card points or reward for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we know this, and it's funny it even has to be said, but no amount of points will ever beat the 27% interest you pay or whatever
Yeah.
it is, depending on your card. Like, is a insane idea to think that you should use a credit card to get points if you can't pay it off. So like that's rule one, level zero actually of credit card game is you have to pay it off. And if you're not in a place to use credit cards, no problem. Maybe another day, just don't get into it if you can't or can't manage it. The other thing is too, I'll say people, this is just stepping into your own a little bit, but like it is very overwhelming to wait 30 plus days to pay your credit card statement. There are no rules about that. You could pay your credit card off every day if you want and treat it like a debit card. I highly recommend that people pay their credit cards off weekly if they are worried about cash flow. Candidly, I haven't shared this publicly, but I've had kind of a personal financial nightmare situation. It has nothing to do with my business. It has something to do with a house that we owned. Not my fault, just literally the worst luck of all time. And money has been extremely tight for the last 3 months. And so I have almost completely stopped using credit cards the last 3 months. And again, I'm the guy on LinkedIn talking about credit cards all day because I just like, you know what? I need to know where every single dollar my family spends is going. So we just have been using a debit card and it's been great. And we're going to start the credit card next month again, which is because we're kind of recovered now and it's fine. We had like this kind of nightmare situation. It's over now. It's paid off, but it's like, uh, that I'm not a good candidate for a credit card in that time because I like really want to track every single dollar closely. So yes, you still can do that with a credit card and pay it off, but sometimes my point is here in sharing this is it's not always for you, and you just the rewards are not that great where it's worth any kind of financial damage to you or your family. So I couldn't be in better more agreement with you there, Jackson.
Wow, appreciate the transparency and, everyone has some of those challenges they face. So I'm glad to hear that it sounds like you're on the other side of that and getting through it. One thing I admire about you, Colin, and the reason why I wanted to have this conversation today is because I think you're someone that does a lot of things right, that you approach your business with integrity. You're someone that I admire and have a deep respect for. So, if someone is listening to this episode today and they want to reach out to you and learn more about what you do, where's the best place that they can find you?
Yeah, well, I appreciate your words so much there. Yeah, to find me, LinkedIn is I'm pretty active there. So Colin Stroud on LinkedIn. I'm posting content there every day. Obviously, it's free and teaching you stuff. But on my website, so my company is called Go Somewhere, and you can find me online at gosomewhere.world. My email's there. If you want to shoot me an email, I'll reply in maybe 24 to 48 hours. But I'm happy to reply to just mention you listen to this podcast, and I'll put you at the top of the list.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Colin. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you, Jackson. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, you must have liked it. So hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.